but some of these moments haunt me every day. I was a senior at a large university in the south. I was deeply in love with my girlfriend at the time, Destiny. Our relationship had survived several stints of long distance, often across multiple continents. We were truly devoted to each other. We shared a room in the bottom half of a 2-story duplex with our roommate Teresa. The duplex had 2 rooms and was bright orange, precast slab concrete. The government built our entire neighborhood in the 1940s for returning World War II vets. Over the subsequent decades, the students, who took over as tenants as the older families moved to the suburbs, painted the duplexes vivid pastels in all sorts of funky color combinations. This accumulation of students and the wild color schemes earned our neighborhood the nickname Partywood. Our city was vibrant. It was full of art, live music, and youthful energy. There was a new gallery opening or music festival to check out every weekend. The place was a student's dreamland. It was also low on crime. Though these points sound like a perfect combination for fun, they were also a recipe for carelessness and a false sense of invincibility. One evening in autumn, after Destiny and I returned from a late-night concert, we encountered a visibly shaken Teresa in the living room, with a blanket pulled up to her neck. The TV was tuned to static, as the local broadcast had stopped and we poor students couldn't afford cable. She was just looking at the static and listening to the white noise, shaking her head. "Jesus, Teresa, what's wrong?" asked Destiny. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Teresa looked at us and said bluntly, with terror in her eyes, "There was a face in my window. I saw it." I immediately ran into her room. She had pulled the curtains to the edges of the windows to cover every pane of glass, pulled the curtains back, and looked outside. There was nothing but the stately pecan trees in our backyard, swaying in the night breeze. While Destiny comforted Teresa, I went outside and checked the area near her windows for some sign of an intruder. Again, nothing. Here I should note that Teresa was a very kind and gentle person, but was prone to drink. That very night we saw evidence of 2 nearly finished bottles of wine. There was also a stack of the horror films she habitually watched atop the VCR. Destiny made a bed for Teresa on the couch, and eventually, we made our way to the bedroom. "Do you think it's possible her imagination got the best of her, babe?" I whispered to Destiny in the dark. "Maybe so, but she seemed really, really shaken up," she replied, nuzzling against my chest. "You shouldn't just dismiss what she said." "You're right," I whispered as I kissed her forehead. "I'll talk to some of the neighbors in the morning and see if anyone has seen or heard anything suspicious. I love you. Sleep well." The next day I did my routine jog through Partywood and encountered some friends picking up the beer cans and solo cups scattered across the yard after a rager they had thrown. One of them, Sam, was a buddy from my hometown who I shared a couple of courses with at the university. I told him the events of the night before, and he began to shake his head slowly as a grimace took over his normally cheerful face. "Oh man, Duke, this is bad news. I've been hearing about a peeping Tom running through this neighborhood. I know Teresa does a lot of sipping, but I mean it. You never know with these guys. They always get bolder and bolder. Watch your back, man." I thanked Sam for the info, and with a heart heavy with concern, turned away to jog back home. As I started to run, Sam caught me by the arm, and "Hey dude, if y'all need me, just holler and I'll be right there to help, you hear?" Thanking him again, I ran home. I told the girls what I had learned over coffee that morning, but we all agreed to keep our eyes open and to try to not leave anyone home alone at the house. Things were quiet for a couple of months, and the fear which had been in the front of our minds gradually disappeared, as classes, parties, and the joy of being young and in love returned as our primary preoccupations. That all changed one afternoon in winter, when I returned home from a class to find a police squad car parked out front. I ran inside to find one police officer searching the house and the other examining a broken kitchen window. Apparently, while Teresa was showering and Destiny was napping in our bedroom, someone had broken in and stolen several pairs of panties out of the dryer and Teresa's keys, which of course included our house key. The police found no physical evidence of the intruder but urged us to change our locks and remain hypervigilant. One officer took me aside and walked me to the backyard. Outside my bedroom window was a chair I didn't recognize. It was pointed at the windows next to our bed. He had been watching us for God knows how many nights, watching us sleep, watching us make love. I nearly retched. We were once again on edge. Teresa took to taping her curtains to the wall, so that not even one sliver of space could provide a view of the inside of her room. Destiny had long been planning to move to Germany for a study abroad program, and she said goodbye with a worried face. I love you. Be careful, and take care of Teresa. I was despondent. I missed my girl so badly, and I didn't feel safe in my own home. I took to joining Teresa in her nightly drinking, and we kept to the living room where there were no windows. I tended to sleep on the couch, the bed seeming much too large without Destiny there. One night in January, Teresa was out with friends, and I was drunk and full of self-pity. It was approaching 1 a.m., and I headed to the bathroom to relieve myself. My mind drifted to Germany, and I wondered what Destiny was doing at that moment, as I sat on the commode. Suddenly, I heard the crunch of dead leaves far off in the backyard. My ears perked up, and adrenaline immediately coursed through my body. I was, however, not finished with my current activities. The crunch of leaves became louder and nearer, and the pattern was unmistakably that of human footsteps. I cannot begin to describe the absolute dread I felt, anchored to the toilet, unable to move, knowing he was coming towards the bathroom window. Finally, the footsteps stopped. The window was about 7 feet above the ground, but there was an air compressor beneath it one could stand on. I waited, my breath held, fear coursing through my brain. Slowly, so freaking slowly, I saw fingers appear at the ledge of the window. Like the legs of a tarantula, they wrapped over the ledge, and I saw the top of a head being pulled up into view. Time seemed to crawl to a stop as his eyes and face came into view. We made eye contact, and I have to believe he was surprised to find, rather than a freshly showered young woman, me, pants around my ankles, fear and rage in my eyes, my fist screaming, "You motherfucker!" at the window. He fell backwards, and I prayed to all the gods that ever were that he had broken his neck or his leg, as I quickly wiped and pulled my pants on. I sprinted to the backyard and saw his back as he leapt a fence and disappearing into the darkness. I called 911 and the cops came quickly. They informed me they had been keeping an eye on the neighborhood as the peeping events had become more frequent. I rode around in a patrol car for an hour, trying to find the guy and ID him. Nothing. He simply disappeared. Teresa moved out. She couldn't handle the fear any longer. I didn't blame her. My landlord even cut the rent so I could afford to stay while I looked for a new roommate. The word had spread about the Partywood peeper though, and it was very difficult to find a taker. I'm an honest person, and when people asked why the last roommate left, I felt compelled to tell the truth. That was usually a conversation ender. I talked to Sam about the situation. We came up with a plan. We set a camera up in the bathroom and ran a cable to the TV. We ran the shower, turned the light on, and parted a curtain to make it appear that someone was probably wet and naked and peepable. Meanwhile, Sam and I watched the monitor in the living room and waited to see if a face appeared in the window. I'd purchased a stun baton and bear spray, as well as the zip-tie cuffs that riot police use on protesters. We intended to run opposite sides of the house, bear spray his face, zip-tie him, and then take him inside, where I honestly planned to use the stun baton on his testicles until the police arrived. I know, this is savage. I know it's taking the law into my own hands, and there would likely be legal consequences. I didn't care. The sense of unease and violation I felt had ruined something inside of me. Something rotten. I wanted to take it out on him. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, we never had a chance to enact our plan. He never came to my windows again. Soon, I too left the country for a job teaching abroad. Destiny and I reunited in a different continent, and tried to put the events behind us. For the most part, we did. I learned years later, he had gone on to break into a house and rape one of my neighbors. He was never apprehended. I only wish I could have stopped him before anyone was hurt. This was something that happened to me quite some years ago. I'm 21 now and was about 14 at the time. I was a freshman just starting high school. I'll start by saying that even though I was 14, I didn't look like it. I looked like I was about 10 or 11 due to my small, 100-pound stature, and the fact that I have never looked my age. I to this day still don't. Before I started high school, I'd relied on my parents to regularly pick me up and drop me off every day on time. And like the lovely parents they are, they did so without missing a beat. Usually my dad would drop me off in the morning, since he worked at night, and my mom would pick me up since she'd usually be done with work by then. If not, she'd at least break for lunch to bring me home. Sometime, however, after completing middle school, my dad got a new job driving dump trucks. A job that prompted him to have to be up at 5 and at work by 6:30. My mom's job requires her to be on her feet just about all day, and she's usually up half the night because of said job already. So she needs all the sleep she can get. So to make getting me to and from school easier, they figured, you're a big girl, you can take the school bus from now on. I had no problem with that either. Some of my friends lived in the neighborhood and took the bus. I thought it would be cool to ride to school with them. And it was. The bus showed up at 6:45 on the dot, every day. The guy was never late. I had to always be there by then. The stop was at the corner on the street, over by my house, so I never sweat it. So I'd probably show up there about 2 minutes before, or the other kids would already be boarding by the time I got there. Not very responsible of me, but I figured, hey, I made it, didn't I? So I never made any effort to show up at a more reasonable time. I did this for probably a good month, until I full-on missed the bus one morning. I have an older brother who was going to the same high school, and he just started his senior year. He had a car, so he'd been on his way to school already. I was getting no rights from him, since I was a freshman, and he refused to be seen with his little sister. Probably even there already. My dad was already at work, but my mom was still fast asleep at home, so I wasn't totally screwed. I could still get to school. Then, as I'm watching the bus pull away, knowing I wouldn't catch it, I hear a car start behind me. I turn around and see a car pull up right beside me on the opposite side of the street. The driver rolled down the passenger side window. I thought it was pretty weird how someone was stopping to talk to me when it was almost 6:50 in the morning and nearly pitch black outside. But me being 14 and never having personally experienced stranger danger before, I didn't pick up on any red flags yet. So the guy, let's go ahead and call him Tom or something, leans over and goes, "Hey, was that your bus?" Stupid me goes, "Yeah, I missed it." The thing about the bus I took, so many people who lived in our neighborhood went to that school. There were 4 different stops. 2 of them were before mine. Then there was mine. The final one was 5 or 6 streets down, just near a red light and a 2-way intersection. I saw the bus stop by the final stop and watched from far away as the kids start to get on. Tom says, "Hey, it stopped. Maybe I can drop you off really quick. You can catch it. Or better yet, I'll drop you off to school." I immediately remembered something my mom told me. My mom is a very high alert, always be on your guard type of person. When she was young and still living with her parents, there were 2 instances where someone tried to kidnap one of her younger siblings. It was only because of her and one of her older brothers that both the situations were avoided. Because of this, she always drilled into me and my brother growing up to always be mindful. If something seems fishy, then leave ASAP. She reminded me again a while after I started riding the bus to not let strangers trick me into following them anywhere, getting into cars, etc. Me, being your typical teen, always rolled my eyes and I'd be like, "I'm not a baby. I'm not gonna fall for some I have candy or wanna see my puppy tricks." That's when she told me that people will try different tactics with older children, like, for example, offer to drop me off to school if they see that I missed the bus. And remembering all of that, I told him, no. And he started persisting. "No, really, it's no trouble. I'll even open the door for you, look." Sure enough, this dude leaned over further into the passenger side and threw the freaking door open. Me being the naturally anxious girl I am, we're talking about a girl who shook like a leaf when she first took her driving test at 17, started to freak out inside. I tried telling him no again, but this time it came out in an indecipherable stutter. Nah. It sounded more like me making some weird sound, so I just shook my head really hard to get my point across. That's when he urged again. But nowhere near as nice as he was before. Tom shouted at me, "Just get in the damn car." His sudden as crap mood swing made me freeze up right on the spot. I tried to muster up all the guts I could and firmly said, "No." I think I still stuttered a little, but I'm sure Tom got the point. That's when he threw the driver's door open and stepped out. If I wasn't freaking out before, I really was now. In my head, I was just like, nope, 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 bitch, nope. I was a tiny girl and this guy was really tall from my perspective. I didn't know if he was going to do something or what. But to my relief, all he did was slam the passenger's door closed. I don't mean the kind of slam people normally do when making sure it's properly closed either. I mean he really slammed that thing, like he was angry or something. Then he went huffing back into his car and sped off without another word. Ran the red light at the intersection and everything. As soon as he was gone, I booked it all the way home and woke up my mom to drop me off. Got yelled at for missing the bus, but after all that, I didn't even care. Even though I probably should have. I never told anyone because I thought my parents would make me stop riding the bus, thus force my brother to let me ride to school with him. I'd have much rather ride with my friends at the time. I made it a point to be on time from then on. A few months after that, one of my friends told me that a friend of her little sister's, a middle schooler, got kidnapped from her bus stop, also in our neighborhood, since she went to the school in our district. She happened to miss the bus one morning and got in a car with some guy who offered her a ride to school. I don't remember all the details of what happened with her, but she ended up being alright. My friend told me when her family saw the story on the news, they showed a picture of the man. He was white, on the lanky side, had shoulder-length brown shaggy hair, and they said that the door handle on the passenger side of his car was missing. I couldn't make out Tom's face when I encountered him, but I still had a strong feeling it was him. He probably hadn't removed that door handle yet, because I know he opened that door. I especially felt it was him considering he probably mistook me for a middle school kid the morning he stopped for me. Probably couldn't even make out the fact that I had a high school uniform on due to it being dark out. I definitely was never late for the bus again. Let's never meet again, creepy kidnapper. Believe it or not, this was one of 3 horrifying experiences I've had in my life. This happened almost a year ago during spring break. I was house dog sitting for my cousins, who were on vacation for spring break, with my brother, and asked me to look after their house and dog for a few days. I had no plans for spring break, and they were gonna pay me, so how could I say no? Now, here is some background information, just so you all have a clear picture and understanding. My family and my cousins live on the same fairly big cul-de-sac. They live on one end, and we live on the other. The way my routine works is that my parents would go over early to give the dog, whose name is Daisy, her breakfast, let her go out, then head off to work. Keep in mind that Daisy is a mix of 2 aggressive dogs and is huge, but she also wouldn't hurt a fly. I would then go over and visit throughout the day to check the house to see if Daisy didn't destroy anything, pee anywhere, give her attention, play with her, get her dinner in the evening, and finally, give her a walk at night. Here is where it begins. It was 2 days before my cousins would be back, and it was time to give Daisy a walk. Keep in mind, it was 11 p.m., which is the normal time cousins take her for a walk, if you can believe that. We both walked up the driveway and to the front door, when I got a chill up my back and my gut telling me that something was wrong. But I forced it away, thinking I was just paranoid. I unlocked the door and we stepped inside when I noticed Daisy began to perk up and started to look around the house. More specifically, upstairs. That only made my paranoia worse until I walked into the kitchen and found it was a mess. All the cupboards were open and pots and pans were sprawled all over the floor, and the living room was pretty much in the same way. That was when I saw the back door. Somebody pried the door open and began their spree. That was when I had the chilling revelation that whoever did this might still be inside. I heard Daisy begin to growl at the darkness upstairs. I pull out my phone and grab Daisy and dial the police. I get about halfway out the door when I realize the phone was on speaker and the voice of the operator could be heard saying, "911, what's your emergency?" As soon as she said that, I heard loud footsteps come barreling down the stairs. I shut the door and book it down the street with Daisy in her leash in one hand and my phone in the other. I scream at the operator, telling her that some men were breaking into my cousin's house. And as I was about to give the operator the address, I heard a loud, deep voice behind me shouting, "Hey, stop!" I didn't stop. In fact, that made me run even faster. Not even 2 seconds later, I heard a loud bang come from behind me. I live in Texas and have been around firearms enough to know that it was a gunshot. I stopped and looked behind me to a man in front of my cousin's house, pointing a gun at me, with another man standing next to him, also loading a gun. I turned away and looked to see I was only a couple of yards away from my driveway. I stood for a few seconds deciding whether or not to haul the rest of the way to my house and get shot, or just stand there and wait for them to do God knows what. So, I chose to haul ass the rest of the way. I dashed in between my parents' cars for cover. That was when I heard another gunshot shatter one of the car windows and another hitting the brick wall of my house as I made my way to the front door, where I busted in and found my parents both standing by the front window in their pajamas, having heard the gunshots. I dropped to the ground in shock and exhausted from the run. They come up to me terrified, and I begin to tell them what happened, when I realized that I still was on call with the police. I could hear the voice on the other end saying, "Hello, sir? Are you still there? Are you injured? Sir, please answer." I tell her the situation and give her my address. However, things got worse when I looked out the window and saw the two men coming from down the street to my house. I shouted at my parents to lock the door as I ran to the back door to do the same. My dad sees this and heads upstairs to get his guns. My mother grabs me and is weeping at this point and begins to pray. My dad comes back down with his shotgun and hands me his pistol. One of the men began banging on the door, shouting, "Open the door, open the fucking door!" My dad points his gun at the door and begins shouting as well. Me and my mom both move to the kitchen so that she can call my brother and tell them what is happening. When we hear banging on the back door from the other guy who was shouting as well, I then heard gunshots come from the front door. I guess he got desperate and began firing at the heavy wooden door with little effect. I go over to see if my dad is okay, when the back door bursts open and the other man steps in and points his gun at my mother. I raised my gun, and like a miracle, sirens began wailing in front of my house, followed by the red and blue lights. The man hears this and takes off like a bat out of hell, back around my house, and the man at the front door does too. For the next couple of minutes, we hear gunshots coming from down the street. Then we hear nothing. Another cop car shows up, followed by an ambulance. That was when we stepped outside and saw the ambulance pull up in front of my cousin's house, and the cop from the other car comes up to us and takes our statement. That was when we saw the gurney with a bloody blanket on top come out, and one of the burglars come out in handcuffs. The next day, an officer came by and told us what had happened. These men were staking out the place and knew that the house was empty except for the dog, and studied when I would come and go, and decided to wait for me to take her on a walk to strike. The guns were in case I or someone comes by, or if the dog was going to give them trouble. They didn't expect me to be back so soon, and they hid in the master bedroom and were expecting to ambush me if I ever searched upstairs. And they chased and attacked because they heard me make a phone call, and they knew I saw their faces. Not only were they planning on robbing that place, they were going to silence anyone who got in their way. When the police showed up, they panicked and ran back to my cousin's house. When the police followed, they shot and killed one, and the other surrendered. The burglar, thank God, is still in prison. And I say to him, let's not meet again, because the next time you point a gun at my mother, I won't hesitate.